Welcome to the Stock2Me Podcast, powered by IBN. This original audio production delivers market and sector insights, as well as exclusive interviews with innovative executives shaping the future in fast-moving industries, and may feature a client partner of IBN or one of the 60-plus investor-focused brands within IBN's dynamic brand portfolio. As a multifaceted financial news and publishing company, IBN leverages its extensive distribution network, utilizing multiple proprietary corporate communication tools to introduce both public and private companies to a vast and diverse audience of investors, consumers, influencers, journalists, and other targeted segments of the public. IBN may have received compensation to produce this audio content. Please be sure to read IBN's entire disclaimers for full disclosures. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the next revelatory episode of IBN's Stock2Me Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to another exciting show here with me, Carmel Fisher, where we bring you all the liberatory insights of amazing things happening out there in the capital markets. And we're spotlighting today Renewal Fuels Inc. They are listed on the OTC as RNWF, and they are operating as American Fusion. Today, I have CEO Brent Nelson joining me to dive a little deeper into the developments within the company. Brent, welcome.
Thanks very much, Carmel.
Excited to hear more, but just as a start, tell us what Renewal Fuels is all about. What's the main mission and vision?
Well, what we're doing is a business in the middle of a business combination with Kepler Fusion Technologies Inc. We're a Texas company. Renewal Fuels has now transitioned from a Delaware Corp to a Texas Corp, and we're in the process of a name change right now. It's being approved by FINRA, and as soon as that happens, we'll actually be filing a Form 10, I think, later this week, I hope, and doing a registration statement with the SEC, and then we'll get the keys to the company sometime here in the near future.
Very exciting. We'll look out for that SEC update as it unfolds. But Brent, you've committed to a fully operational 100 megawatt fusion unit by end of 2026. This is an extraordinarily aggressive timeline for a technology that most of the energy industry considers a decade away. Walk investors through exactly where you are in the integration and validation process today, and what's perhaps the single biggest execution risk between now and that delivery date.
Well, the idea here is that we're going to be, putting electrons either behind the meter or in front of the meter by the end of this year. Our 100 megawatt unit is already in construction now. We've got a 5 megawatt unit, which is we're calling a pre-production model, that's in our shop as we speak. And so what we're trying to do is, by creating a 100 megawatt unit, is we're creating a number in the industry so it's easy to count, right? So 100 megawatt units equals a gigawatt, and 10 megawatt units equals 100 megawatts. So what we've done is created the foundation, I think, for commercial fusion. And so in doing so, there's a bunch of hurdles. Going behind the meter, it's really a piece of cake, especially here in Texas. Going in front of the meter, there's going to be interconnectability. There's going to be a bunch of regulation hurdles that we have to go through. That's probably going to take a year to 2 years. And so what we've chosen to is really take the low-hanging fruit and go behind the meter. We can do data centers, industrial parks, things like that, straight off the go.
Awesome. So this the model that we're looking at here seems to be the power as a service business model, and the commercial model sells electricity on a per kilowatt basis, competitive with hydropower pricing. Now, for investors trying to model this business, what does a typical customer contract look like in terms of duration, and then the volume commitments?
Okay, so the idea is we're going to be doing bankable power as a service contracts. We've already got one customer we've been working with for almost a year now. Utilities work very slowly, so it's a tough market. Data centers, small data centers are much faster and more nimble on their feet, so they can make decisions a lot quicker. as power as a surface, we're, in Texas anyway, we're looking at 6.25 cents a kilowatt hour. So, a 100 megawatt reactor generates approximately 54 million bucks a year. And as far as our return on investment, our EBITDA is going to be 80% or maybe even north of 80%.
And looking at the unit economics, how are you thinking about those as you scale from your first 100 megawatt unit to, say, a gigawatt of installed capacity?
Well, if you look at our business plan, we hit about a gigawatt of power delivered by, I think it's 2028. So after that, we scale quite quickly, because really all we're doing is building a widget. It's like a better mousetrap. So, once our connectability, we basically have a unit. It's small, it's compact. A 10 megawatt reactor can fit in the back of a pickup truck. So it can plug in. It just has to go into really the same infrastructure as a solar farm or a wind farm. So, we're not reinventing the wheel on the infrastructure side. All we are is a different production side.
Tell us now about your intellectual property and how this is creating a competitive moat for you. Just fill us in. I know you filed one of the priority patents in January of this year. So just fill us in on that. And
okay, so a lot of our patents, what we've done is we've made our patent applications, right? So they're in the middle of being processed now. So a typical patent can take 3, 4, even 5 years to be issued. So by priority patents, those tend to be looked at within 6 months or so. And so it just means that the prosecution of those patents can happen a lot quicker. And so our patent attorney, we have a whole patent strategy. We also have a trade secret program. So there's a lot of things in our trade secret program that we don't put out there. And so our patent attorney worked at the patent office for six years. So he's working full time on our stuff. And, we're looking at least 260 to 300 patents probably by the end of this year.
So, looking at geopolitics right now, what are your immediate sentiments about what's happening and how it's going to impact your industry, but also your company?
Well, what we look at right now, thank God we're in Texas, so we can get our licensing relatively quickly. It's very, relatively cheaply, relatively quickly. We've applied for 9 of our models, our Texatron models, for licensing at this point. We're in the middle of that process now. We may have another month or 2 to go on that. And as far as geopolitics, our market is huge in the United States. What we're going to see is over the next 3 years, the overall energy need market is probably close to 30% bigger than it is today. And, there's no way the U.S. can meet that need. So we're going to hopefully fill that gap and have as many customers as we can use. As far as going outside the country, we've already talked to certain countries out there, Caribbean entities, and that burn diesel for every kilowatt hour they produce. So, it's a great invention. It's great for the world, and it's literally the cleanest energy on the planet.
Now, you've mentioned active engagement with the DoD, NASA, state energy agencies. Are any of these conversations at a stage where they represent real near-term revenue or even contract milestones, or are we still in kind of early exploratory phases?
Yeah, the problem with the DOW and NASA and whatnot is usually they put an RFP, and then you apply for an RFP, which is a request for a proposal. And, for instance, we applied to NASA for the lunar and Martian power stations. And so that's a very long process. When you're dealing with government, you may or may not get the contract. You don't know. And it can literally take years to, basically move from A to B just to get to C. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. We've talked to the Department of War about maybe producing a unit for a submarine or maybe an aircraft carrier. And old fission reactors, when they need servicing, those units are out of the water for anywhere from 3 to 4 years, and it's very complicated. With our unit, it would be, plug and play. You take it out, put it in, piece of cake.
And should things unfold as you're expecting them with these discussions underway, what would that mean for the balance sheet?
Well, the idea that we're doing power as a service, every machine, every 100 megawatts that we put on power on stream is $54 million, a net of probably close to 80% or maybe even a little higher. And, what we're projected is, 10 units for 2028, 75 units for 2029, 250 units for 2030, and then we go to 1,000 units for 2031 and beyond. So our people in manufacturing say those numbers should be attainable. They actually think we can do double those numbers. So hopefully I'm a conservative guy and they're half of what we're due, and I'd rather over deliver and under promise.
Absolutely. And earlier in our conversation, you touched on the fact that there's a FINRA name change underway, the Form 10 that's coming very soon. So for investors sitting in OTC markets right now, what would be a good timeline to offer them to full SEC reporting status? And also, how would an uplisting factor into the capital strategy as you're approaching commercial deployment?
Okay, so what we're doing is in our Form 10, we're going to be applying. We're telling them that we're going to raise $50 million of capital in the beginning, and so what we'll do is the first move, I think, is to uplist to the QB, and then the second move is going to be uplist either to NASDAQ or the Texas Stock Exchange. We've already had a couple of conversations with the Texas Stock Exchange, so we're in Texas. We'll see how that goes.
Fantastic. And we'll be here to keep up with all those developments. If there's 3 things you want our investors to walk away with, what would those be?
One, well, this is really a paradigm shift in technology. It's like our physicist says, every 100,000 years there's a change in technology, and it was man harvesting fire, and this is maybe the next big change, out there and on the world scape. And so, that's probably number one. It'll be interesting to see how the world accepts this type of power. I think everybody's going to be very happy with it. It's plug and play, and in normal systems, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're using normal infrastructure. That's number one. Number two, the thing scales. The customers aren't going to disappear. We're going to have as many customers as we can create units out there, for the foreseeable future. Number three, once we're up and running and power as a service contracts are in place, the company's going to print cash. So, I've been in the business a long time commercializing technologies. And if you don't bring a product to market, you can't there's no commercial viability. So, what we're really doing is we're bringing a commercially viable, better mousetrap to the market, and we'll see how it goes. I think, we're way ahead of our competitors at this point, and I think let's see who gets to the finish line.
We cannot wait to see what happens there. And so thank you very much, CEO Brent Nelson from Renewal Fuels Inc. On the OTC is RNWF, operating as American Fusion. I'm Carmel Fisher. You guys stay tuned for more.
Thanks, Carmel.
The Stock2Me Podcast is an original content production powered by IBN, a multifaceted financial news and publishing company that delivers next-generation corporate communication solutions. Utilizing proprietary corporate communication tools such as news aggregation and syndication, social communication, and brand awareness techniques, among others, IBN introduces both public and private companies to diverse audiences to enhance reach and recognition. IBN may receive compensation for services and solutions provided to its client partners. You should assume that the owners, officers, and directors of IBN or financial analysts mentioned in this production may hold a position in and may intend to trade the securities in their own accounts. This production is not an offer or recommendation to buy or sell any securities that may be mentioned in this production. The information in this broadcast is presented solely for informative purposes and is not intended to be or should it be construed as investment advice. As in all investments, investment in the featured companies carries inherent investment risk. Listeners should review the companies thoroughly with a registered investment advisor or registered stockbroker. This production by IBN is not purported to be a complete study of the featured company or other companies mentioned. Information used in statements of fact have been obtained from featured companies and other sources but not verified nor guaranteed by IBN as to completeness and accuracy. Such information is subject to change without notice. Please see IBN's full disclaimers and disclosures at www.ibn.fm/disclaimer. Music in this episode is by Infraction. For more, visit inaudio.org.